And we're back to talk about the Black Goose exercise. The Black Goose exercise is also a way to begin talking about our folder structures. Starting with the Black Goose exercise, and then pretty much in all future exercises throughout the rest of this class, you won't be submitting to me any individual files, like an individual HTML file. You'll be submitting to me a zipped folder. But how are you going to organize these folders? And what's the folder going to be? And what's going to go in it? That's really critical. So I'm going to strongly suggest you use a folder structure as I'm going to show you here. First I'll show you the schematic, then I will make a folder structure. But instead of making a folder structure each time for each project, why don't you make a generic one, and then you can copy it and paste it for the next one and the next one. That's my suggestion anyway. Here's the general idea. We have a project folder, which is going to be named for the project. In this case, it'll be named something like Black Goose. I don't really care what you name it, because I shouldn't see it. You're not going to submit that to me. I suggest putting some kind of a folder called Originals or Resources or Resource or whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter. Frequently you have files that you use to make the website, but they don't themselves go on the website. In this case, in this example, you're going to have to download in the Black Goose file, you're going to project, you're going to have to download a TXT file, which has got the text you're going to use, and an image, which you're going to use. Now, the TXT file, a TXT is not a web document, so it doesn't go in the root folder, which is the website, but the image is used on the website. It is used on the page, in the body. We're going to use the image. So that does go into the root folder. So the originals, frequently that's where we put other things we want to keep track of, that we use, maybe a Word document that we take some text from, or some images that we're not really using, but we're going to use them to make the images that we're going to use. And a lot of times the originals or resource folder, whatever you call it, will be blank. That's empty. And that's okay. Just ignore it. So it's a place for you to keep things, and that way you don't lose them too. And they don't end up in the root folder. The root folder is the website itself. So it's really important, and this is a general concept for web design overall, that you don't put things don't upload things to a web server. Don't put things in the root folder, in other words, that aren't really on the website. Why? Well, everything that you put in the root folder, which would be everything that in the real world you upload to a web server, takes space, and you pay for that space. So unnecessary resources are a waste, and you really want to know the things in there are things you really want and are really using. So that's the root folder. If nothing else, the root folder, in the case of our generic folder structure, should contain one HTML document, blank.html, which we're going to rename and reuse and rename and reuse. And in our future exercises, some of them, and in the real world, there would be many HTML documents in your root folder, and probably a lot of subfolders in the root folder too. Websites aren't just a single flat folder. There's frequently so many things in them that they have to have a lot of subfolders to stay organized. And there'd be lots of image files. There might be other kinds of files too. That would be in web documents, like maybe video files or audio files or things like that too. Okay, so let's think about, keep this structure in mind, and let's go ahead and make a structure so you can see what I'm talking about. And where did I have, oh yeah, I'm going to use this folder. So we're imagining this is your drive or your folder on your hard drive or your laptop or something like that. And we're going to start from here. So I'm, of course, using Windows. You might be using a Mac. Same idea, though. You're making new folders. And there's lots of ways to make a new folder. I just do right clicks all the time myself. And remember, we're going to call this project or project folder. And remember, even here, even at this generic level, please, all lowercase, and if you have multiple words, use hyphens or underscores in between them and no special characters, right? So that's the overall folder. Inside the project folder, what did I tell you? We're going to make a new one called something like resource, or resources, or originals, or whatever you want to call it. Doesn't matter. But stick with the naming idea just because it's good to Keep remembering that. And I make a new folder. I'm going to call it root. You could call it root folder. And if you did, you should spell it right. And if you did, you would put a hyphen or underscore in between those words. Doesn't matter because you're going to be renaming that anyway. And what goes inside the root folder? Well, inside the root folder is a the blank. If nothing else, you can have your blank.html. Do you remember the blank.html? Yeah, I've got it here someplace. I've got a copy of my blank. There's my blank. We made it back when we did our first page. And if you didn't, you could remake it right now. I think this is a labor-saving thing. That's why I'm suggesting you do it. What is in it? Just to remind you, it's our basic HTML required minimum structure. Doc type HTML head with a Medicare set and a title, a body. You could put these in here too, just to have something to start with. You don't have to, but might be labor saving. And if you found you use and reuse the same things over and over again a lot, maybe you put a lot of paragraphs in there and maybe other headings or things like that. Eventually, you could keep changing your blank as you go along. So that's what's in the blank right now. Okay, good. I'm just going to close it up. I'm going to take my copy of my blank. I'm going to copy it or cut it, whatever. And I'm going to go into my project, into my root folder, and put it there. Okay, so now if I go back, and you see I'm using my address bar here to go back and see my project folder. That's my generic project folder. Now I've got to do a project, right? My project is going to be called Black Goose. By the way, the Black Goose structure that we're going to be kind of duplicating is in the assignment, which I put someplace. We better go back and find it. Yeah, okay. Black Goose exercise handout. It's the handout. This is the handout. This is the structure project folder, which I suggest you call Black Goose. This is how I write the structure in the assignment and how it's going to be duplicated over there in the real folders, right? Resource folder, which I call originals, but I call it resource, whatever, doesn't matter. And that's where I say you're going to download the TXT file, and then a root folder, which is going to be called something Black Goose in your name. That name is your name. Then and we're making a Black Goose named HTML. That's what we're going to rename the blank file to be. And there's an image you have to download here in the root folder. So the root folder, which is renamed, remember, it is a root folder, but we don't name it root. We don't use the word root. We name it the name of the website. And then there's two things in it. There's going to be one HTML file and one image file. So this is the structure we're using. And just to show you what that, remember, we're going to use this as the basic idea. And we made this generic one here already called project. I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to paste it there. It's gonna paste with a name which would be wrong, but that's okay. I'm gonna rename that. And what I said to call it, Black Goose, whatever, something like that. Black Goose Bistro. That'll make more sense in a minute. Now I'm gonna go into it, and now resource that can stay. But remember, the root folder is gonna be renamed, right? By the way, if these names are not exactly what's used in the textbook, because this is one of the actually will be somewhat rare instances where you're going to do an exercise from the textbook. If these names are not really the ones in the textbook, that's okay. All right, because as long as you use naming rules, it's fine. And I suggest you make it Black Goose, your name, first name, last name, whatever. And then remember, inside this folder is something called blank, and I suggested you rename that also, right? Name that to be Black Goose Jack.html, something like that. And we got to do some downloads now, right? Okay, where are these downloads coming from? This will be the first time, I think, that you're going to use a resource folder for downloading stuff. And it is right down here at the bottom of the week. And inside are the resources for two projects. The first one is Black Goose. And I remember I told you there's a TXT file and a PNG. When you download things from Moodle, let me strongly suggest, first of all, I think it's nice if you can use Chrome. So I'm using Chrome, it'll make it more seamless. You do a right click on the thing and choose Save Link As if you're using Chrome. Whatever you do, don't just go double clicking on the things, or don't just click on the things, because that could cause them to open up in other programs and make you really confused. So I'm doing the image first. It's actually, that's right. This is it's a PNG, not a GIF image, so I have to change it on the instructions, I think. But anyway, it's a PNG, and it looks like a goose. See it? And I'm going to put it in where? Well, remember I said I put it into the root folder, right? This is the root folder, right there. I can see it's Black Goose Jack is the name of the folder, right? And then we've got this TXT file, but it doesn't go in the root folder. It doesn't go in Black Goose Jack. It goes into the resource folder. Resource, I can see it's in resource, blackgoose.txt. Good. So I've made my folder structure. I made a generic folder structure. I copied it over. I changed the names of things, and I downloaded the stuff I had to work with. These procedures, these steps are things you're going to repeat every time you do a project in this class. So it's really important that you get used to those. I'll pick up in a minute with the rest of my instructions. Okay, and we're back with the exercise on the instruction sheet. And we've made our folders, we downloaded the files, and it says follow the instructions in the supplied video, that's this, and the text pages 55 to 68. Well, I wanted to show you those pages, which I have now misplaced. Oh, they're there. Okay. Well, actually, this is not 55. This is like 56 or 57 or something. But it is really important that you back up to like 55 and start in the section that says, give step 2, give the HTML document structure. Yeah, the actual exercise instructions start on 4.2. I want you to start with 4.2. But remember, it's not just these exercise instructions. You should be reading the text around them so you're getting a connection between the instruction and the text and this exercise. We don't do many exercises from the textbook, but this is a really good one to get started on. And this is a point where I'd say, remember in my introductory video, I talked about committing to the class, committing to HTML, and really doing this stuff. This is where we're doing it. Okay, so this is where you have to really jump in and type and try it and make it work. So why don't I start with 4.1? Well, the 4.1 would just have you entering the text, but I want you to use the text that I supply that you already downloaded. So use my text and my image for that matter too. So you're actually starting here with the structuring of the information. Then you're going to go on to step 3, identify the text elements. You read about that. Reread, perhaps this is rereading, I hope. Then you'll actually do exercise 4.3, setting up the structure. My text is slightly different than theirs, but you won't even hardly notice a difference, I don't think. And then you'll read through this about blocking inline elements and the difference between them, very important. Then step 4, you'll add your image. Yes, you'll add your image in there as it explains, and as the actual exercise steps are following it. And then we'll go into step 5, which is change the look, add a style sheet. You're going to add style within the document itself. And when you do that, you'll see everything will come alive and the actual instructions are there. You can read on through. When good pages go bad is the idea that it's so easy to make little problems with typing. The key thing is you don't just type everything and then see if it works. You type a little bit, you try it. You type a little bit, you try it. Type a little bit, try it. And you have to get good at troubleshooting your own text, and this is about troubleshooting. So those are the instructions in the textbook you're actually going to follow. I'm not going to do the whole thing for you, but I will show you a couple of things as we get going. So I have my folders, right? Here it is. And I'm in my root folder, and I've got this blank file. I'm going to open that in Notepad++, or open in brackets, same idea. This is my basic structure here, right? Good. Now, where is the text going to come from? I told you download the text and you put it in your resource folder, and here it is. I'm going to open up this text document, and here it is. I'm going to grab the entire thing, Control A or select it all, one way or the other, and copy it. I'm going to go put it in right in the body. I'm going to stick it below the H1 and the P1. Those will be there just to give me an idea about what I'm supposed to do. So what would this look like right now? Okay, first of all, I'll tell you that Black Goose Bistro, I believe, yes, is actually the title that's going to be used. So it's actually not part of the body at all. So this you're going to get out of here, and you're going to stick it in here, right? Well, remember, before I can determine, see what happens here. Well, let me just show you what happens if I do it wrong. I paste this stuff in. I want to run it in Chrome. What happens? It's blank. Something happened. Nothing. Why don't I see anything? Well, it's not saved, right? This is a common problem. Always save before you run it or before you do a live preview in brackets, or maybe you don't have these options. Sometimes that happens. Okay, so you would drag and drop onto a browser from your My Computer window, or you go to the browser and you do File Open, right? Or you could just after you get it started in here, you could just refresh it to get a new view, right? But you see what this looks like without structure. This is what HTML looks like without structure. So it's going to be your job to add the structure. So you're going to add the structure and build it as you go from the instructions and the text. And no, I'm not going to do all that for you, but I will show you what it looks like at this stage if you've got that complete. Let me go get my other copy. So this is what it looks like when you get the image in and you've done the structuring. So you're up to the point where the next step is going to be the CSS. Notice that in this example, and in the textbook it explains this, the IMG SRC is always SRC equals quotation marks, and there's always alt equals quotation marks. Those are required for an image element. This kind of replacement empty element, which is just the image. It's a single tag element, as opposed to like the H1, which is double tags, right? Open H1, close H1. That goes inside the H1, as does the text Black Goose Bistro, which is the, sorry, I shouldn't have removed that from that other version, shouldn't I? Back here, the Black Goose Bistro is both here and here. Yeah, Black Goose Bistro is in both places. So the and do notice that we're using a BR, a line break, to break those two things that appear on different lines. The idea is when two things feel like they should be part of the same element, the H1 within the H1 tags, but you want them to appear in different lines, that's the use of a BR. Be careful, this first little exercise uses BR this way here and in a similar way near the end. See how this paragraph, BR is used to break the paragraph into different lines. This is all stuff we're saying belongs in the same paragraph, the location and the hours. Belongs in the same paragraph as far as the meaning of what a paragraph is, but we want it to appear in different lines, so we use BR there. But that's the only time we should be using BR, and BR is actually used kind of rarely. So we don't use it for spacing. We don't use it to make fake paragraphs. Okay, we just use it for that reason. You also notice I put a comment in here. I don't recall whether the instructions in your text ask for a comment, but I think it's really good to add a comment. Why don't you try to add a comment when you do it? This is how comments work. Read about comments in your text. Comment is non-printing stuff. It's like a note to yourself. Like, I got to add some more stuff later, or I added this in such and such a date, and we'll get back to it later. Or you put a comment around chunks of stuff you don't want to use right now, but you later will release, and when you remove the comment tag goes like that and like that. And the stuff inside is all not visible to someone looking at the web page. And then we've got H1s, H2, another H2, another H2. Notice that too. Right, and you do have an EM is there, which is also in the instructions, I believe. Okay, so you get all that stuff done, right? And when you run it, it's going to look like this page right here. The Goose and the H1 are part of the same H1, but they're in different lines. These are different lines also. It's part of the same paragraph, though. You've got H1, H2 paragraph, H2 paragraph, H2 paragraph, and then you've got this EM here, right? So that's what it will look like at this stage. Good. How does it look like at the very end? Well, that's going to be when you add the CSS. And I'm going to show you that briefly. I'm not going to do it all for you, but I'll show it to you. And I've got it someplace here. Here it is. Okay, notice that the CSS is going to go in the head. It's in the head. Okay. Notice that you are going to be typing the CSS just as she explains it. Okay. Don't worry too much about the fact that you don't quite understand all these commands, like why do you write a color like this and so on. It's useful just to do this in this way for now. This exercise and the next one, the cover letter 2, are the last in which we're putting CSS and HTML together, trying to give you a big overall picture. Then we're going to shift back into HTML and just do markup HTML for some time. So CSS, don't worry, you're going to learn a lot more detail partway through the semester, but for now you're just typing what you have in there. This is a CSS comment, because you want to see the difference in how CSS is a different language. And you see, because we're putting the CSS in a style tag, open and close style, in the head, open and close head, not in the body, right? This is a way to have what we call embedded style sheet inside the document. It just makes it easier for you to put the style sheet here as opposed to having it in a separate document. Easier on the instruction level, although it's not what we traditionally do in the long run. I don't think that she asked you to type this border stuff. It is what she uses to show you, though, the different, I have it commented out right now, the different elements and how they work. Okay. And I'm going to just go ahead and run that for you. So this is what it'll look like when it gets all done. You have the background color, you have the margins, you have color on some text, you have different fonts, you have all caps there in your Black Goose Bistro. This stuff is all centered. This is what it looks like when it's all done. And it's going to take some troubleshooting for you to get to this point, but it's really important that you get to this point because you're going to use the same structure in our next exercise. Oh, sorry, one last thing I wanted to tell you. How about zipping the folder? And that, remember, now this is the first time, and then from here on out, you're going to regularly be submitting a zipped folder for almost all assignments, as opposed to individual file. And there's a reason for that, not just to make your life difficult. The reason is that it isn't enough just to give me an HTML document. I have to see that you have the relationship between the HTML document and the images and other files that are being used together. I need to see if that relationship worked out. So a file on its own is not a web page. It's all the things that go with it. So that's why I need the folder. So here I am. I got my Black Goose project. Do I zip that folder? No, I do not. I mean, I'm assuming you did all your work. You're all set. You can go inside the project. Now I've got the resource folder, and it's outside of my root folder, which is Black Goose Jack. Do I zip the resource folder? No, I do not. I should not see these things, the project folder or the resource folder, when I'm doing the grading. All I should see is the Black Goose folder, and the only thing in this case that should be in there are the HTML document properly named and the image that you downloaded, which you shouldn't have to change the name. If anything happens on a download of something like an image or whatever, and its name gets changed on the download, like maybe it adds a 1 or something like that, you rename it. Okay, you make sure that it's named properly. The only things should be in there are those two things now named properly. We're using our naming rules, and the folder should use naming rule 2. But the only folder I will see will be this root folder, which is named this right now. So what do? I suggest you just do a right-click in the case of a PC, and it's similar on a Mac, and you Mac people can figure out your own process. But send to compressed zip folder. Yes, there are special zipping programs like 7-Zip and WinZip and lots of other ones too. Don't use those. You don't need to use those. We're only zipping because we just want to put it together. We need to make it like a single file. So zipped compressed folder will do fine. Just send it to a zip folder, which I click on that, and there it goes. It always highlights it. It's suggesting, hey, do you want to change the name? But if you name the folder properly to begin with, you don't have to change the name. And now will be a file which is the name of the folder will be the name and a .zip afterwards. It's a zip. It'll probably change the icon on it. The icon will be now, I don't know. It'll change it though. So this is what you put on Moodle for me. And it will act like a regular file now. But just so as you know, once you zip something, the stuff on the inside doesn't work the same or act the same. So you get everything right, just the way you want it, then you zip it, then you submit the zip folder. And when I get it, I unzip it, and that's when I look at it. But if you go in here right now, and you can click into a zip folder and see the stuff. It wants to do strange things to it, whatever. But if you go in there and you try to work on the stuff inside the zip folder, or you actually try to use it or display it to check your work or something, it wouldn't work properly. So remember, stuff inside a zip folder stays zipped until you want to do something with it, then you unzip it. I think the easiest way to unzip a folder is just go open with and choose, in the case of Windows, Windows Explorer, open with a Finder window kind of thing, and then go grab the thing and copy it and go paste it outside of the zip folder. But you can also just double click and use extract. I like the control of just being able to copy and paste. Go to the inside, copy the stuff, and go paste it outside if you needed to. But right now, it's the same thing. It doesn't disturb the original folder. It's sitting right there. It's just act as a single file you can put up on Moodle. So that's zipping.